Today's video will be for the knitting crowd on a technique I'm going to start employing from now on. As we know, when we cast off, then we end up with this almost crocheted edging with the V stitches across it, and it ends up firm. If you do, like my examples here, a rib pattern, then it spreads out that end, so you always end up with one side that's loose and pulled together from your pattern, a little bit uneven if you don't make your cast on stitches perfectly aligned. I decided that if the cast off is going to be in this kind of design, then I was going to start casting on a different way so that it ends up a bit more similar, and that's where I came up with this. You can see it's a bit straighter than my first one, and if you look at this side, then you see that almost V knitting, or almost the crochet style. And you can see how different it is from the usual cast on. It holds your pattern separated like the casting off does. And so that's what I'm going to start doing from now on whenever I do something like this. And I'll show you how I did that. For this particular example, then I used size 7 knitting needles, which are 4.5 millimeters. And for when I cast on, then I'm using a crochet hook. And what I'm doing is I'm chaining, and then from my chain, I'm using that to cast on my stitches onto my knitting needles. And if you use the same size crochet hook as you do your knitting needles, then you end up with slightly too loose cast on stitches, and it just pretty much ends up almost exactly like this. So what I had done for this example was I went a full millimeter smaller. I don't think I used, no, I didn't use my 4.25, I used a 3.5 hook for that. So that was an E hook that I used. So I haven't tested if it's just doing 1 millimeter smaller that makes it better, or if it's a kind of ratio thing in the sizes. But for this example, then I'm going to use the 1 millimeter smaller. And what I like about this is that instead of having to pull your yarn to a distance where you believe you're going to be able to make as many stitches as you need to when you cast on, then you just start off the same way you would with crocheting, and you start at the end, so there's no guesswork as to how long of a tail you need. So you do that and just chain however many you need. I'm going to chain 16. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I just pull that 16th after I finish my 16th one out a little. Now I'm going to take my knitting needle, and this you're going to need both your needle and your crochet hook for, because it's easier to get your stitches working with your crochet hook. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave, you know how when you make a chain you have one side that's V's and one side that's bumps. I'm going to leave my V side down, and then I'm going to take my crochet hook, and when you look, you're going to have one bump that is immediately, let's see if I can focus, there we go, one bump that is immediately underneath where your working yarn is. You're going to skip that one and go into the next one. Put your crochet hook through it, grab up yarn and pull it through, and you're just going to put that over your knitting needle, just like that. And remember, you don't want to put your cast on stitches too tight, otherwise it's going to be hard to work it. So you just go through and you do that the whole way, going on to the next bump. Put your crochet hook through, grab yarn, pull it through there. You go ahead and grab a good bit of it, just so it's easier to put it on. You tug it down a little bit. You're going to do that all the way down your chain. Just grab that yarn, pull it through that bump, and put it over your knitting needle. Into that bump, grabbing yarn, pulling up a loop, and wrapping it around the knitting needle. And just do that all the way down. Okay, now I have them all on, and I can start working them in whatever pattern I want with this nice firm straight edging here. And just so you know, the reason why we skipped that first bump and went into the next was because I noticed when I had started my practice one, then it ended up curving. You can see how it curves this edge right here. So you end up with one curved edge, one corner edge, which might be useful to you if you have a pattern that you might want a corner like that. And also, if you go into that one, then you also end up with one more stitch than you need. So when I went back this way, then I ended up with this extra loose corner here because I had one more stitch on here that wasn't used. So always skip that first little bump that's right up against your working yarn when you go through here. But from this point, then you can just work your yarn as you normally would. And like any other cast on, then if you work them too tight, then it's a little difficult to get in there. But it works just like usual. So let me go ahead and work a line here.